Hey everybody, this is Matt. I'm making a new Pokemon TCG video, and this is for a fun deck called Slowking and Friends. So, this is not going to be a competitive deck. This is not going to be a deck that pumps out 100 damage a turn. Not going to be a deck that shows up out of nowhere and one-shots everything. This deck does 0 damage the entire game, okay? I'll just put that out there. You're not going to do a single damage counter to the opponent's team the entire game. The whole strategy of this deck is to disrupt the opponent and to mill the top cards of their deck. And when I say mill, I mean you discard cards from their deck and you try to win by discarding their entire deck so that they cannot draw a card and they lose the game. So you have a few different ways of doing something like that. And your main way of doing it is using Bunnelby. And he has a ancient trait that allows him to attack twice a turn. And he has 2 really good attacks. His first attack for 1 colorless will discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Then his second attack, also for 1 colorless, will allow you to take a card from your discard pile and put it back into your deck. So he helps you put some of your more important cards back into your deck. And also hurts the opponent by discarding their deck. So he's your main attacker here. He's just going to be continuously discarding cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Sometimes if you need to put a card back into your deck, like a supporter that removes energy or something, or one of your supporters that discards cards from their deck, from the opponent's deck, you can do that. So he is your main attacker. He's the guy you want to have the 1 darkness energy on, and just keep going to town and keep trying to get out Bunnelbys. And that's why you have Revive in there. Because Revive, if a Bunnelby dies, you bring up another Bunnelby, you can play a Revive and put a Bunnelby from your discard pile back onto your bench. So it's right back in the game, you know? So Bunnelby is your main dude. He's your main dude. But the deck would not work. Would not work without Slowking. Now Slowking has an ability. You can flip a coin. If heads, choose 1 energy attached to the opponent's active Pokemon and move it to another one of their Pokemon. So, like in this matchup, if I had a Slowking out, I can move. If I flipped a coin, use the ability, flip a coin, got a heads, I can move that fighting energy that's on that card bank onto the one of their bench Pokemon. And it comes in use in plenty of matchups. One really good use is, a lot of these EX decks are running Hoopa EX and Shaman EX. That's kind of their engine. Well, you can move some of their double colorless energy, some of their non-psychic energy onto their Hoopa EX. And suddenly you moved it onto a Pokemon that can't even attack with it. Because Hoopa, his only attack is 3 psychic to do damage. So you can move all the energy onto Hoopa. Now it does take multiple Slowking to get out, because it is a flip of a coin. It's not a free thing by any means. It's not free. So that's why you need a big line of Slowking. And this deck runs a 4/4 line of Slowking, so that you can get out 2, maybe even 3 Slowking and have multiple chances to move energy. Now if you're doing your job right, and if they don't have a massive amount of energy retrieval, then you won't have to move multiple energy a turn. So you may not need that many Slowkings out. But you'd be surprised how many decks can bring back your energy or, lay down multiple energy in a turn. That's kind of how the game works. That's one of the best parts about the game is the energy acceleration in all these different decks. So sometimes you do need to have Slowking, and even on top of that, Enhanced Hammer, Crush and Hammer, even on top of that, maybe Team Flare Grunt, just all in 1 turn, just to just get rid of a whole bunch of energy, and sometimes you need to discard it, but a lot of these decks, especially some fighting decks, especially some, other decks, you don't want to discard the energy because they can bring it back from the discard pile. Garchomp can bring it back from the discard pile. Carbink Break can bring it back from the discard pile. So you don't want to discard it in this matchup if you have to. You much rather move the energy onto something. Now again, with a fighting deck, it's kind of weird because if they don't lay down a wimpy Pokemon, then you can't move it onto anything good. And that's kind of a problem with the deck. If your opponent knows what they're doing going into it, they're going to go, I'm just going to lay down 2 Pokemon. So if you want to move all the energy onto the other one, that's okay. That's my main attack, my secondary main attacker. It's not going to affect me. But if your opponent doesn't plan correctly from the get-go and they lay down a Pokemon that doesn't have the best attack or something, you'll see later on in this game where I feel like the game starts to turn around a little bit for me is when they lay down a Pokemon that does no damage. And I'm like, okay, moving all the energy onto that thing because you have to think about this. In this deck, it's 100% of the time you're thinking, you're going, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I need to do now? What do I need? It's not something where you just set it up and it just runs. No. There's so much you have to do with this deck, and one of those cards that you have to think specially about is the Sableye. Now, the Sableye is something I found more recently, and I love the card. I think I want to play it in some more decks. And for 1 Darkness Energy, and he's the reason why we're running Darkness Energy in the deck. For 1 Darkness Energy, you can choose one of your opponent's supporters in their discard pile and use the effect of it. So that has a lot of good uses, if your opponent's setting up really, really good, and they Wally in this, and use Wally to evolve that, and use Wally to evolve this, and you just don't got anything, you can use their Wally to evolve your Slowking. Or, you can use their Wally to evolve your Bayonet. Or, you can use their, Professor Birch's observations to draw you some more cards. Or use their, their Judge or their, in. Exactly. Use their in the shuffle both hands in. Even if they get down to 1 or 2 prizes left, which I don't know if it happens in this game, but in another game I was playing, a late game Sableye, inning them down to 1 or 2 cards, just hoping that they wouldn't be able to draw into some energy and keep attacking basically. And that's basically Sableye's purpose, is to reuse your opponent's supporters and just help set up, because it's not doing offensive to the opponent, but it helps you set up, and your opponent's gonna have to take 6 prizes. Unless you just can't put down a basic Pokemon, they're gonna have to take 6 prizes. So it's okay to give up 4 or even 5 Pokemon. In this game, you'll see how close it gets. And but it's okay. It's okay. This is not an EX deck. This is not something where EX 2 prizes, EX 2 prizes, EX game. It's not like that. You have to play it a lot like chess. You're like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the Shuppet. That's 1 prize. I'm going to bring up a Sableye. Sacrifice a Sableye to disrupt them a little bit more. That's a 2nd prize. Because your opponent's going to be set up, most likely. They're going to, unless you can disrupt them really heavily from the beginning, they're going to be set up. So you're going to be spending the entire game deconstructing their setup. And you see right now he put down the Gligar, or should be putting down the Gligar. And the Gligar to me was like a big sign, like, put the energy on that thing, because it can't do any damage. Now you'll see later on it's not the best idea, but it was a good idea at the time. And so yeah, I'm sacrificing stuff. I find out Shuppet has resistance to fighting, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize that. I maybe could have evolved into Bayonet and maybe gotten an extra turn or 2 out of that, and every turn matters, because the deck doesn't have consistent draw, it doesn't have Octillery, it doesn't have Shaman. So the longer you can take, the longer you can survive, the more cards you can draw and stuff. But it does have a lot of draw options. It has 3 Tierno, 3 Professor Birch, 3 Shauna. That's 9 draw cards in the deck, which hopefully allows it to just keep going and keep some. But a lot of times you do draw dead, and that's where the Sableye can even come in use, because you can send up the Sableye and use your opponent's draw supporter and draw yourself some more cards. Yeah, you'd probably be sacrificing it though. So this matchup was really hard because the Garchomp has the ability to, you know, hit for decent damage, which all my dudes are really weak. Hit for decent damage and also bring back an energy. So I'm struggling to remove his energy and move his energy at the same exact time as he's bringing it back and stuff, you know? And that's very, very tricky. Sometimes the Enhanced Hammer is completely useless. Sometimes it's completely useless in matchups because they don't run special energy. And that's why I only run 3 Enhanced Hammers. Sometimes you wish you could run less, but you do run 4 Ultra Balls, so you can discard the Enhanced Hammers if you need to. And the Crushing Hammers are always kind of flippy. You can sometimes pull your hair out, just be like Tails, Tails, Slowking, Tails, Tails, Team Rocket's Handiwork, Tails, Tails. I mean, the deck is very flippy. Very, very flippy between Slowking, Team Rocket's Handiwork, Professor Birch's Observations, Crushing Hammer, just a lot of stuff. Now, this whole game I'm thinking to myself, okay, the Garchomp's at free retreat. That really, really sucks. That means even if I move all the energy off of them, they're not locked active. But I'm hoping to myself that I can draw into my Team Aqua Secret Base so that I can put it down and give a 1 retreat. Because even, I mean, a Garchomp with 1 retreat with no energy on it and no way to get energy is a lock. And that's what we're looking for. That is the whole thing of the deck. You want to lock something active that can't attack you and then just mill them like crazy. And I spend the entire fluffing game trying to get this lock. It's insane how long this lock takes. It's like that dude from Naruto that's playing that chess game. You know, it's like it takes forever. But when that lock comes, you just freaking fist pump and you're like, yes! You know, so this game goes on forever. It's a 20-minute game. Okay, I may cut a little bit off the front, a little bit off the end, but it's a 20-minute game, which is long. It's long for games, you know. And it's really, really back and forth, you know. The Garchomp is a constant pressure, and he doesn't play a lot of really interesting supporters. So like my Sableye doesn't have a lot of choices. I have like Wally I can choose from to evolve into a Slowking, which I do 1 point. I have an N, which I do to, you know, shuffle it down and stuff. And it's amazing how much energy this deck runs. The Garchomp deck runs. I would think for a deck that takes 1 or 2 energy on average, and can even bring back more energy with Carbink, you probably run like 6 or 8 energy. And I think he's running close to 10 or 12. The more energy a deck is running, the harder it is to lock them with my deck, with this Slowking and Friends deck, because it just gives them more options to put down an energy and attack, So I'm spending a heck of a long time removing and moving, just trying to get a Pokemon with no energy on it. And sometimes it can actually work against the opponent. There are ways to bring back energy, because if they don't do it specifically right, if they don't bring back the energy on the perfect Pokemon, you can almost lock them. You know, like a match I'm not showing here was against a Sceptile EX and a Mega Sceptile EX deck, and they were attaching extra energy from their hand onto their bench. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's not the best idea if I'm trying to move energy off of your active so it's locked. You know, because if you attach all your energy to your bench and then I move all your energy off your active onto your bench, then you're locked. And I basically win the game at that point. But I will say, the deck has my deck, the Slowking and Friends, has a way, you know, to draw cards quickly too. And you have to always be aware of how many cards your opponent has left and how many cards you have left. Because I mean, if you're winning by decking, you can't run out of your deck first. That's kind of, that's not the right strategy. So you definitely have to be aware of that kind of stuff. There's sometimes where if you have that lock and you know your opponent is not going to be able to do anything, you just have to stop playing cards. Just don't play cards. Don't play any draw cards, even if you don't have the perfect hand, even if you don't have the perfect setup, because you have to make that gap between you and your opponent's decks even bigger. You have to help them get down to 10 cards while you're at 20 cards left. Help them get down to 5 cards left while you're at 20 cards left. Make that gap bigger, because if you can get the lock, even if you can't even attack, if you can make that gap bigger to the point where if you just pass every single turn, they'll run out in 5 turns, you win the game. So the deck is really different than like normal decks, but it's a deck I love to play, even if I lose 50% of the games or 60% of the games. I love to play a deck like this because it's so untraditional. It's not something someone's going to be expecting to see played, and it's not something decks are going to normally plan for. I faced another deck that had 2 switches in it, and I was going, how many decks nowadays run 2 switches? And that's what you're trying to capitalize on. You're trying to capitalize on the fact that they only run 1 switch, and maybe you discard it with Bunnelby, and then they go, oh crap, I have no way to get off the active. And maybe you plan around them going, well, I have 3 Flowstone in my deck. Well, then when you put out your 1/1 Bayonet, all the Flowstones don't work anymore. And that was a late game addition, which I think is a really good choice, honestly. Bayonet is a really good choice because it can shut off the Floatstones, which gets around my stadium. Because even though my stadium says every Pokemon has +1 retreat, Floatstone says you have no retreat. So it gets around it. But with a Bayonet in play, suddenly their Floatstone doesn't work. It also helps against Mega EX decks that they go, okay, I'm gonna put it down in the next turn evolve, and it won't end my turn. But you get that Bayonet out there quick enough, hopefully, and then their turn does end when they evolve. And so some of this stuff you may be seeing, I may be using Bunnelby's second attack to put a card back into my deck, and that's the whole gap thing. If you can mill your opponent's deck 2 cards, so they have 2 cards, so they're 2 turns earlier to mill, 2 turns earlier to deck themselves out. But if you put 2 cards back into your deck, it's almost the same exact thing. They're still decking out 2 turns earlier than you are. So sometimes you have to do that and put your more disrupted cards back into your deck, and know that I only have 13 cards in my deck left. I should be able to draw into one of those disruptional cards, especially a Team Rocket's Handiwork, which with 2 heads can discard 4 cards from the opponent's deck. Something like that could be huge. And actually, it was funny with the Sableye, I ran into a Wailord EX deck, and they were also running the Team Rocket's Handiwork. So I had my Sableye active, so I'd use my own Team Rocket's Handiwork for my turn, and then use Sableye's attack to copy their Team Rocket's Handiwork, so I could get double Team Rocket's Handiwork. And it was really interesting matchup. It went really long, and I ended up winning. But I think it was mainly because I had the Sableye to use their Team Rocket's Handiwork every single turn, while they had to somehow have a Versus Seeker or another extra copy of it or something, So this game is starting to wind down. I finally have the lock. If you can see, I have a Gliscor with no energy on it. It has a 2 retreat thanks to the stadium. Now, if it ever gets an energy, I lose the game. Because he has 1 prize left. And this is where it's just crazy. If he gets an energy, it's game over. It's game over. And I was just like, oh my lord, if he gets 1 energy. But he only has 3 cards left in his deck. Only a 5-card hand. I discard a Garchomp. I discard a Carbink. And you have to make sure with to remove the energy from the Carbink. The one on the break on the bench, I had to purposely remove the energy from it so that he couldn't send it up and bring back the energy easier. He'd have to put an energy on Carbink to bring back the energy. But if he doesn't have the energy in the first place, then yeah, that's a lock, So I think this is basically when I figure out, oh, he doesn't have an energy, and I win the game. So the next turn or 2 is basically me just discarding the rest cards in his deck. I wanted to go tricky and do something special at the end, and didn't really work out. But dude, this game was insane. It was an insane game. I'm not even gonna argue. It was insane. Garchomp is such a fast deck. Bunnelby's weak to it. I mean, I have nobody over 100 hit points. just freaking crazy. And this is where I'm talking like the very end here. You don't need to attack. If your opponent has less cards left, you don't even need to attack. You just pass and go for broke, you know? I mean, you just, you don't need to attack, So I have 6 cards left in my deck. Sure, I get to try this Shauna and draw more cards. I didn't need to do that. I'm just going to pass. Do they have the energy? No, I win the game, And that's how you play the deck. It's like 3D freaking chess, everybody. But it's a heck of a fun deck to play. So, I hope you enjoyed watching this video and learning about this really creative deck that is multi-layered and really interesting, but it's probably not going to win you most of your games. But when you do win a game, it's going to be flippin' awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video and support the channel. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a ton of fun playing Pokemon TCG in the future. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.